Hey, what's up, guys? Node Investor here. Hope everyone is doing well. Let's see who we got here. We got a few folks coming in. All right. So, I'm going to cover the markets here. Bitcoin selling off a little bit. It was looking really good earlier. So, I'm going to be going over that. Just some thoughts I'm looking at here. Let me see. Oh, yeah, you can see my chart. I was going to say, wait a minute, my chart's not up. It looks like it's up. So, hopefully, you guys can see the screen. If not, let me know. So this is officially technically the end of the month for the private group. So this will be the last post stream, whatever we want to call it, on the current channel, the Oasis channel. I've also posted this live stream on the broader channel, so there'll be folks from that as well. If you missed it, I did put the renewal link on there for next month. It'll be a little quiet for me in terms of posting this weekend. I've got some family that came into town today, so I'll be busy for a couple of days, and then Sunday kind of just getting the new channel and everything set up and people added, and then we'll get to it. I know it's a holiday here in the States, so if you are on travel, and there's going to be, probably be a slower period on Monday just because of that. We'll see how it goes. So my guess is quieter weekend, but we'll get going. So August. Man, what a month, I gotta say. Let's take a kind of a quick look back at August here. We started the month after this big rally into July at Head and Shoulders that broke out, the inverse Head and Shoulders, and then towards the end of July was pausing, and then going into August, quick sell-off, right? No ETF here, no ETF here. That triggered a big sell-off, and alts got smashed. Just a crazy month. In August for the crypto space, and then we saw just this bottoming action, the transition phase, which didn't really make for a whole lot of good trading. And so if you're new to trading, if you're new to some of this, that's a good lesson learned, right? The best trading is always going in the direction of the trend. Sure, you could do counter trend trades, you could do a lot of that. But the best trading is always going in the direction of the trend. And clearly, the only thing to do during this couple of days here was either wait it out or go short, right? And so I introduced some short trading here towards the tail end of this. We did some ETH trades on the short side there. And then this was just like almost 2 weeks of just choppy, not a whole lot. There was a couple of good alt pumps throughout this part. And then it wasn't until the last week and a half or so that we started really seeing some nice moves in the alts, as well as BTC. Some short covering continues. And so during this entire rally, and even during the pullback that we saw here in the last couple of days, the pause, I don't even know if I want to call it a pullback. It was a pullback, but it wasn't like dramatic. You can see even during that, the shorts continued to cover throughout that entire period. Which is good news. Right, the bearish tone is kind of going away. You're starting to see the shorts covering, but there's been a lot of short covering, so it makes you wonder how much of this recent move was this versus fresh buying momentum. And it certainly is both, but there's absolutely an element of people were just overly bearish, and there was some short covering that's taken place, and so there's that aspect there. But now the question is, have we seen enough momentum to continue this move? Are we going to see another leg up? All things being equal, right? Let's take the near-term view. I'm going to take the big picture view. But if you look at just the big picture, let me go to the weekly chart. You can see that this has been 3 weeks of bounce. And I don't want to sound bearish here, but you just got to look at the reality, right? Take a very clean, objective point of view. 3 weeks of bounce on lower volume every week. Sorry about jumping around there, right? And so you got to remember that within the big picture, we're still within this big pattern that's forming on BTC. Technically, it's a descending triangle. So you can't lose sight of that, right? You got to remember that until we resolve from this, and this may continue through, September and maybe even into October, but until we get out of this, you just have to keep this in the back of your mind. Doesn't mean you don't take long trades, because absolutely there's been some good long trades to be had during this little 3-week bump. But if you look at the big picture, right, the broader view of things, especially the volatility that we saw at the beginning half of the year, compared to that, you know, these last couple of weeks have been relatively small, right? Relatively quiet in the big scheme of things, but we've certainly had some good moves. But you just got to remember, we're still within this. Now, could this continue higher for another week or two? It sure could, right? Or you could have maybe next week kind of a dramatic pop higher and then a reversal. Ultimately, that's going to be the test. Getting above this, you know, back to this prior high that we saw at the end of July, getting back up to there. Do we make a lower high and then retest the lows and continue in this pattern, or do we break through? Or is this the end of the bounce this week, and then next week's a red week, and then we continue, you know, a break to the downside and test the lows, or break lower, double bottom, right? There's a lot of scenarios, and I am not going to pretend to know that this is exactly what's going to happen, because the technicals are conflicting here a little bit, right? There's signs that, hey, that was the low. There's some good bullish signals, but there's also some potential bearish signals too, right? Like the bullish signal is, look at the volume on this bottom week, right? That was super big volume on Binance. It was a double, you know, we had this double bottom back here, rally higher, technically a higher low. Huge bearishness here. Shorts went massive, and then we've been rallying since then. So could that have been a good intermediate low for a couple of weeks or even months? It could be, right? And so from a bullish perspective, that looks good. You got to remember the fact that, hey, we held support. I mean, we tested it again and again and again. And so far, 6K has proven to be resilient. And so that's positive, right? You got to remember that aspect. And so there's a lot of good things there. But then on the negative side, you can make a case for, hey, this is a little bit of a bear flag within this broader pullback, and it looks like that's coming to an end, and now we're going to see another leg down, right? So there's that perspective. And if that happens, you know, do we make another higher low and then go again, or do we just smash right through this? So and the reality is, it's hard to say, right? It really is hard to say. Now on the daily chart, things look good from this perspective, right? We're technically trending higher, continuing to make these higher lows on the daily chart. These last couple of days of corrective action, pause, whatever we want to call it, is just going to form a nice little healthy bull flag in the consolidation. And the nice thing is, I mean, this move here that I was looking at here, sorry, I'm jumping around again. I was doing a retracement from this guy here, this impulse leg, to the top here. And if we did that, you can see that this pullback basically came right back to the 382 level, which is good, because usually if you have a retracement that stops at the first key fib level, I don't really use the 2-3 level much, but the 382 level is kind of the first real key level. This also happened to align with this breakout point, right? So this in and around 6,800 that we are all watching late last week, where it just was ready to go. It came right back to that. So that's very positive. The fact that we rallied, we retraced, we held the breakout point, and we're seeing some pretty strong move off of that. That's positive. And so 4-hour chart looks good. Daily chart looks good. Now we want to see some follow through, right? In the next day or two, we want to see this thing bust higher. And if we do, then the next window to pay attention to is this little block back here, right, that we saw. And that's going to be kind of the next little area to be watching here in terms of where it could bounce to next. Let me do a reverse fib analysis here to show you another angle to this. And if you haven't already guessed, I'd like to use the Fibonacci. I like the ratios. So if I do a swing analysis from this high back here, end of July, to this wick down here at the lows, you can see we paused right at the 382, and that was that resistance. And then we broke right through that. We went straight to the next fib level. That's the 50%. Technically, it's not a fib level, but it's a very common retracement. And now we're pausing, and this little bull flag, if it breaks out, the next level to watch is the 618 on this bounce. That puts it at around 73, 75 or so, in and around there. So basically above 7,300, which is right smack in the middle of this window that I'm watching. Now, this is a big range here, right? I mean, it could overshoot, it could spike to 74, it could under and just get to like 73.30 and then pull back. But this little zone is kind of the next leg up. So if I wanted to go long here, this is what I'd be looking at, right? I'd like this little bull flag that's forming. I'd be looking at, oops, not this guy. I'd be looking at a quick pop to the upside into this window. And even if it continues higher, look at that. The next line, the 786 on the bounce, takes you straight to that trend line, right? And so that'd be best case scenario, in my opinion, is we basically continue to rally straight into that 77, 7,800 zone. And that's where we see major resistance, because that's the trend line that has been acting as the wall for quite some time. And so could this continue higher? It absolutely could, right? So you got to be, you got to go with the trend here until the trend is completely reversed. Now, it had a potential to reverse here 2 days ago. And I did take a quick short trade on that. But again, my rationale was this is just a pullback. And when BTC hits 6,800, I think that's going to be the end of the short, at least for now. It could have done one of these, right? It could have came to 6,800, bounced, and then pulled back and continued lower. But I closed the short out once I saw BTC hit the goal. That was a short on ETH. And man, I got to say, that was a tough short because I entered too early. I jumped in here, right, and then instead it's just started to rally, and it literally came within like 50 cents of my stop loss before the short actually played out in my favor. And so the better thing to have done in that scenario, and the reason I went short ETH over BTC is just because ETH has been the weaker one, and I thought if Bitcoin breaks down, ETH's going to break down a little bit more. And this was a classic little double top here on this 1 hour chart. And so I thought this is going to be just a quick flip on the short side. It broke, pretty significantly. Some high volume came in, and I waited for a little bit of a bounce, went short, and I expected the momentum to continue, but instead it found support and it just started to grind higher. And at that point, I said, I'm just going to let it take me out from my stop. I'm not going to close out. And it didn't take me out, and then it just kind of rallied, and then Bitcoin hit 6,800. My target on the short was 270. And you can see here, it almost hit it the second time it pulled back, but I ended up closing it out, here once Bitcoin hit 6,800. We had that rally spike lower, and then there was some news about the CBOE futures for ETH. You saw that big pump. So it was good to be out of that short at that time anyway. So, there was some pullback, some potentials on that side to have been had there. So what if you use the log chart? This is log. Let me see here. What's the question there? So if you don't use log, it looks way different, right? On the weekly. You must be referring to the BTC side. So yeah, so that was it. And so now what, right? Looking forward, BTC real quick, and then we'll go look at some of the alts that I'm watching here. So I'm liking Bitcoin from the long perspective. It needs to clear here though, like today or very soon afterwards, right? If the daily close looks like this, that won't be bad. But what I don't want to see, so here's me with the bear goggles. Let me put the bear goggles on. Always looking at both scenarios. You guys could probably guess what I'm looking at here from a bearish perspective if this does not continue, right? So we had this high, you had a rally, you had a pullback to the 382 level. Now you're getting another rally, and if this peters out right around here and starts to do one of these, that won't look good, right? Because then you're going to break through that most likely, and then you'll have a test of the next level down, which is around 6,700 or so. On the fib levels, and support is right around this zone anyway. So that's what I'd be looking at. If it starts to roll over, I would get cautious. Now, not an automatic short, but I would get cautious from the long side. And the reason it's not an automatic short is because the daily chart still looks good. We've already had that first pullback, so I'm not as aggressive on the pullback anymore as I was the first time, because this could just as simply do one of these two, right? And then bust out higher, after the weekend, right? And we've seen that happen before, where you have a consolidation and it looks like it's going to go, and then it doesn't, and then it looks like it's going to go, and what ends up happening is it just forms a continuation pattern that just chops around for a couple of days, and then it busts higher, right? So it could double top, but I'm not necessarily going to get aggressively on the short side because of this scenario. And right now, I'm leaning in favor of the bulls, and so. But it looks good. I mean, I wouldn't be against taking an entry here with a stop just below Always risking that it just chops for a while and you do get stopped out. But if it pushes higher here, then the next target is that 7,300 or so. Could make for a nice trade, and then maybe even higher if it continues. But right now I'm looking at some of the alts too. BTC looks good. Some of the alts are good too. So any thoughts on the last day of the month or the monthly chart? You know, I use the weekly chart a lot, but I don't use the monthly chart. I know a lot of guys, they like the monthly chart and they look at the kind of the big picture. Let me go to Bitstamp here. I just don't. And I don't have anything against it. I just don't find a lot of use. I'd rather use the granular kind of a weekly view. Weekly view for me makes sense because it's like the same day every week, and you know, the same time. The monthly chart, you know, the month finishes on a Monday, finishes on a Sunday. It's just a little bit more mixed, I guess you can say. Big picture though, I mean, it looks good, right? You got this positive kind of bull flag kind of look to it. Obviously, if you take log off, you know, it looks like it's just continuing lower. So, but we are finding support. You can see that on the weekly chart too, though. But I've not studied it enough to know if or to see any kind of correlation with the last trading day of the month. You know, the week makes sense. You see that a lot. You know, when the new week starts off, there's action typically. Obviously, the daily chart, you see that as soon as the new day rolls over, we tend to see some action right before, right afterwards. But I haven't done a whole lot on the monthly view, excuse me. So ETH from a long-term perspective, let's take a look at that chart. You know, that one's interesting because there's competition coming for ETH. You know, there's a lot of platforms. There's names that are not even tradable yet that are coming, right? You have like things like Dfinity and Hashgraph and stuff like that. And there's going to be more competition for ETH. So if they continue to delay developments to their project and stuff like that, who knows, right? How it's going to pan out from a long-term perspective. If you're a believer in it, and I don't think it's going away, but I certainly think they're going to have some competition. This makes like a good chart from a take an initial position long-term perspective, right? Just because, I mean, it's trying to reverse here on the weekly. The daily chart, it's trying to reverse. It's still not confirmed, right? So this ETH BTC chart continues to break down. So that's, you know, that's something to look at. ETH USD from a long-term perspective, it's trying to hold up, but you can also argue, hey, this is just a bear flag, descending triangle, and it's about to break lower. 200 is my next target if it does break lower, and then 150 if it continues to break lower. Ultimately, it's going to depend on Bitcoin, I think. You know, if Bitcoin starts to rally here, then this could kind of hold this 250, 260 zone. But if Bitcoin starts to roll over, would not surprise me to see ETH at $200. And at that point, honestly, from a long-term view, between 200 and 150, I mean, that looks really tempting to me at that point, right? But there's no confirmation yet. So this is not a bad place to take an initial shot. And I know a lot of you guys and gals have asked me, you know, what about this alt? What about that alt? And I hate to kind of take the cop-out answer, but my answer is always, it depends on what happens here, right? That's kind of my point of view right now is this, because we, you know, until Bitcoin is not the dominant crypto, absolutely it will drive the rest of the market's overall direction. And so if this fails right here or a little bit higher and then starts to roll over, then the alts aren't done going down. Simple as that. And so that's why I'm like, well, from a long-term view, it's hard to answer that question here because this is ultimately going to drive it. And if you want to answer the question on, is this a good place from a long-term perspective for an alt, you have to decide whether you think this is a good place from a long-term perspective for Bitcoin, right? And if you think the answer is yes, then you go with the alts. Now, personally, I think some of the alts have hit bottom. I mean, some of the pricing on some of those alts are significantly down, you know, 80, 90+% from the highs. And the good ones that are going to come back, not all of them will, the good ones that are going to come back, I think they've hit low. But does that mean they automatically just shoot straight up? No. I mean, they could have hit bottom, but then they could just do one of these things for like a month or two, right? Where they just chop around and build this big base. And so I don't think it's like time to like go rushing into the alts from a long-term perspective. But I think some of them have hit low, and I think some of them haven't, right? It's just kind of depends. So that's kind of the short answer or the long answer. I know people generally like a quick yes or no. I think if you're a long-term holder investor, this is not a bad place to start looking at potentially dollar cost averaging in. But I don't know if it's the place to like go all in here just yet. I don't think it is personally. Ripple's another one, where has it hit the low? I mean, it hit the mid 20s here recently. It's right back up. And so the thing with these, right, from a long-term perspective is if the market gets excited about alts again, I mean, very quickly, this will give you 30, 40%, right, to the upside. But if the market decides to roll over very quickly, you're going to be down 20, 30%. And so we're kind of in this middle ground, which is why I'm saying this might not be a bad place to average in. But I don't know if I would like blow my whole wad here in one shot. I would probably, if I really wanted some Ripple here or ETH, I would take some because it's not a bad place from a long-term perspective, but I would keep some fresh capital available to deploy if things look like they're going to pull back a little bit more. So from a trading perspective, there's a couple of names. I'm going to cycle through the USD pairs real quick here. EOS has been one of the stronger ones today. And so you're looking at EOS. I was watching this one. I'm trying to decide, is this going to break out or is this a double top? There is a slight bearish divergence showing up on this RSI as it's trying to push higher. But if it does push higher, it could make for a quick trade into the weekend. I'd be looking at this little consolidation back here as the quick target. So it's not a huge trade, but if it moves quickly, you can make, you can get a quick 5-6% on this, maybe even up to 12% on a quick trade higher on another leg up on here. So the momentum's certainly there. If it moves that high, then I expect this RSI would continue higher and that divergence would kind of go away. If it starts to roll over here, could make a little bit of a cup and handle, but if that pullback gets too deep, then you're going to confirm a double top with a lower divergence. That's going to look ugly. So, but right now I'm watching this one. And like I said, if Bitcoin just kind of chops around for the weekend, a lot of these names are consolidating here, and you can get one of those scenarios too, right? Where you get this nice continuation pattern. And then at that point, I'd be looking for more than just a quick 6% on that move. So definitely keeping an eye on ETH here, or excuse me, EOS. It's looking pretty good here. What were some of the other ones here? Ontology. I'm kind of going by memory here. So Ontology, it had that rally a couple weeks back, very strong move. This week gave us another little bit of a bump, but look at where it stopped, right at the same place. Now, not a very clean one, but you can absolutely argue for a cup and handle type of pattern here, right, with this handle. Generally on the handle, you don't want it to pull back more than 50% of the move. And so if you had, the base of the cup being here and you're up 45%, you don't want it to go back much further. It's already come back to 50%. It's trying to hold. And so this is the low that you want to see this on a handle if it's going to break out. So I'm definitely watching this. If this trend starts to turn here over the weekend, then that might be a good place to look at a potential jump in before it actually breaks out. And then on a breakout, that would also clear resistance back here. That would be very positive. Then I'd be looking at target here or here as my next stop on the upside. And you're looking at, from the breakout point, you're looking at, another 25 to 40% move in Ontology. That would not be unusual considering this long consolidation, right? Especially the move it had back here was huge, right? 160%. So if you're asking for another 25 or 40, it's not out of the realm of possibility. Especially if Bitcoin gets going back up to 73 or 7,500, then you could absolutely see this next leg up. So Ontology is looking pretty good here. I don't think it's ready yet, but it's definitely should be watched. It's forming a nice big pattern in the big picture there. Going by my icon, I think what's setting up here. Let me see here. Yeah, icon was another one that's looking pretty good. Finally had that pullback, and completed this little double top retracement. Right, we had this small double top, You can see where it broke down right there, hit the target on the downside. The good news is that was also this little bit of a prior resistance, now support. And you can see it retraced right to that. It's trying to bounce here. So this one's looking pretty good. It was one of the stronger names here a couple of weeks back here with this big move higher, paused. And so it's still setting up here. You can see where this one paused too, right? It went right to resistance. And so it's nice to see them pause there and then consolidate, because the next time it tests it, it's a good chance that you're going to see this thing bust higher above this resistance. So that's where it paused. And so, I mean, you're kind of getting the feel for this, right? How I look at these charts when I'm looking at targets. I use Fibonacci, I use support and resistance trend lines. And you can see, I mean, it's very common. These things rally right up to resistance, right? They fill this kind of gap here, this open space, and then they pause at prior highs or at prior bases. And it's, you know, and if you see a double top test at resistance, pretty good chance that that's going to be a double top for now and it pulls back. So either take profits or tighten up the stops when you see those type of things happen, because we've seen it time and time again. It's just so common when you see that pattern here. So IOTA was one I was looking at yesterday, just kind of chopping around now. Let me clear this out of the way here real quick. It's been one of the stronger names off of this rally here recently, but you can see it had that pullback, pause. Right now it's making a higher low, so it's just kind of chopping around. It's kind of in no man's land here. If you look at the 1 hour chart, just kind of meandering, you can say this is a little bit of a symmetrical pattern starting to form. And so a break higher here might be good for an entry there. If it starts to break below this, then I think it's done for now. So one to keep an eye on. I'd be waiting for like kind of the 74-cent level to be broken though. Let me see if I have any on the watch list. No, I cleared my watch list this morning, apparently. I had a Canadian dollar and Bitcoin. So I'll go over the Forex here in a little bit. Let's go here real quick here. Doge. I saw that. Doge was pushing higher. You know, it's alt season. Who posted that? Somebody said it's alt season when Doge is going. Oh man, Doge and Dent. If those two get going, it's alt season. So Cardano, it was trying to push higher here. A lot of these are just pulling back in sympathy with Bitcoin, right? So Bitcoin was trying to break out earlier, is pausing a little bit. Honestly, I'm liking this pullback here. If it pulls right back to like this 7K level and starts to hold, I may just enter Bitcoin because of that big daily bull flag and then just let it go, see how it goes for the weekend. We covered EOS, we covered ETH, Icon, IOTA, NEO. NEO was looking pretty decent here too. Looking at the 4 hour, you can see it had that support held very nicely on NEO dollar. You can see it came right back to this breakout point. The rally pulled right back in, and now it's trying to get going again. So that's looking good. Some pretty decent pushes. And I mean, these charts all look so similar right now. They're kind of tracking the BTC, but I'm still liking the alts because we've seen a shift, right? Remember when Bitcoin would rally and the alts would kind of pull back? Now there's some correlation, which is good. You're seeing a little bit of a shift where if the market's healthy and strong, then the alts are outperforming. And if Bitcoin's pulling back, the alts are underperforming. And that's how I like it personally, right? Because the alts are nice for a kind of high beta play where they give you that extra leverage. And so if Bitcoin's rallying or sitting tight and the alts are pushing higher, it makes for a good all-around kind of alt trading market. If you see where Bitcoin pushes higher and these things start to stall out or rally, then at that point, I like to just stick with BTC and just trade that. Right now, I'm still favoring the alts, though. We talked ontology. I'm liking that. Quantum, very similar price action on most of these names here. Tron, you can see they had that breakout pullback, and right now they're just kind of sitting in the middle of the zone there. Monero was pushing higher today, still going. Man, Monero. That's a nice little move on Monero. We looked at Ripple already, Zcash. I'm not sure what the privacy coins are doing, but they're pushing higher for some reason. Some of the other names, let's see, you got Nano here. Nano was a big winner. Had that breakout from a very nice textbook ascending triangle pattern and give you that big push.
pulling back, but look at this big volume spike right now. You can say, hey, that's a nice little bit of a bull flag following that. And these are the right type of secondary entries, right? So you wait for the signal. There's your trigger, boom, and now you're letting this thing pull back. It's right at the moving average. So if you like it here, and if you're expecting a trend continuation, then this is where you start looking at it, either at this touchback to this moving average or on a break above this trend line. And right now it's looking pretty good. It's been one of the leaders, so you got to bet on the strength, right? I always like to go with what's been the strongest because they tend to continue higher. Cardano, I'm going to do Cardano from a BTC side here. So looking at Cardano, this is pretty choppy down here. There's some outside bars. You could almost argue this is a little bit of a bear flag on Cardano here, right? With this, you had the break, kind of this rally higher. I'd be a little more cautious on this guy. Definitely not looking as strong. Let's see here. Lumens. Stellar Lumens. Now these Coinbase names, right? That's always the wild card. Is tomorrow, or maybe not tomorrow. They tend to not do it on the weekends, but today Coinbase could come out and say, "Hey, we've decided, and Cardano and Stellar are going to make it onto the platform, and they're going to start trading next month." You'll get an immediate pop on those guys. So regardless of what the chart looks like, you're just going to get a pop. So just something to keep in mind. That's kind of the wild card there. And a lot of times, I mean, there's just no way to predict that, right? I mean, look at back here, right? I mean, you were looking at this chart, and this looked pretty bearish. And then Coinbase came out, and that was it. Boom. And that kicked off the rally, right? You had that big spike, and it gave you a few days of just big move higher. So something to keep in mind. But big picture right now is still looking not positive, but it's just kind of consolidating in the big picture, right? You can see you've got this lower trend line that's starting to show up here. And so it's still just kind of meandering. If you like it, it's right at support. And so this might not be a bad place to start keeping an eye on it here. See if it can move off of this support. BAT, another one. The Coinbase name. Interesting. BAT. Just sitting tight here. Getting very choppy. Wow. I hadn't looked at this one in a while, so you can see I had a line on the chart here a while back. It was like, I don't know what that line was, but apparently it's living right around that line. And so interesting to see how narrow and tight this is getting. Definitely want to keep an eye on, because if it breaks out of this range, you'll start to see some good momentum. All right. We'll definitely keep going on the alts and the crypto names here. I want to take a quick pause here. So going into next month, I'm going to make a couple of changes in terms of the private channel. It will still be predominantly crypto, so don't worry. I posted a poll out a few weeks back around, hey, would you guys like me to post non-crypto trades? I probably won't be posting a whole lot from the stock side of things, but I've decided to maybe post some more on the Forex market, just because it's very similar in terms of some of the patterns and some of the pullbacks and methodology that I use. And it's nice because you don't need to track with the stock market. The challenge there is, unless you're trading a few of the big names, right? Like, maybe Tesla or maybe a hot sector like the MJ stocks or something, the pot stocks. Unless you're doing that, most methodologies in the stock market are either high momentum trades, which means you got to look for a new name every day and trade the open, or you're just looking for what sector is hot and you're just trading one sector over and over, right? And so there's a lot of different choices in the stock market, and then you can do options and different strategies. So I'm not going to go there just to kind of minimize some of the confusion. But with Forex, you don't need to track a whole lot. You can maybe track the top 6 pairs or even the top 10. And then you just wait for setups there. And so I'm going to be posting some of those, maybe doing some education around that. I was on a couple of trades here that I will review real quickly. Let me see here. And so most of these, the nice thing about these, let me go to the 4-hour chart, is you can see they trend, right? And at the end of the day, you're buying or selling a pair, and so you don't care. You're going long here, you're going short here, you're going long. You don't really care which way it's going. You just want to trend, right? So here's the New Zealand dollar. I had a nice little short trade here. I almost went to the short yesterday, decided not to because of a bearish or bullish divergence I was seeing. Clearly, I was wrong. The trend is continuing, and that would have been a nice additional short trade there. But you can see trends here. But it's very choppy sometimes. And so where's my euro dollar? So like yesterday, for example, euro dollar, I went short on a little bit of a double top, and I got wicked out. And then the short played out nicely. It's just kind of annoying, right? So let me clear that. So I went short, here, or one of these here, in and around here. And then I basically said, I'm going to put my stop back, at this kind of halfway up the neckline. If it decides to rally higher, I'll just get out of the way. And then you bet, you know exactly what happened. I checked it this morning. I was like, hey, how's that position doing? And my stop was like literally right here. You can see those wicks took me out. And then it pushed lower and made for a very nice short trade. So that would have been a good 75 pip move, which if you're familiar with Forex, if you get 75 pip move in a day or in a few hours, that's one hell of a trade. And I missed it because it wicked me out right there. So it actually ended up being a small loss, and then ultimately worked out nicely. So it happens in Forex. You can see how wide these and loose these bars are. And so just like crypto, that happens. But when they get going, they move fast. The other trade that I was on was the Canadian dollar. If you're watching the news, there's all this hoopla around this NAFTA trade. Trump and his crew made a deal with Mexico, put Canada kind of at the on the defense, and now they gave him a deadline saying Friday, Canada, you've got to decide on this deal, blah blah blah. So so I was looking at that yesterday. This is how the charts looked right here. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to just bracket in and trade. And that's the nice thing about some of the trading platforms for Forex is you don't really care. Like I literally went in and I said, okay, I put 2 orders in the books. I said, if it breaks below here, go short. And then I put my target, I said, go short here, put my stop here, put your target there. So you literally stage the entire trade. And then I said, if I go long here, get me in here, put my stop in here and take profits here. And that's exactly what happened. So that was yesterday. And then some news came out today about, hey, they're not going to make a deal in time. The dollar rallied against the CAD. I got filled on this trade. And then by the time I actually got back to the screens this morning, I was already out of the trade. Like it literally just took profits right here. And so that was kind of nice, right? So you set up this trade. So this NAFTA thing is still open, right? So late today, if there's a deal or whatever, I expect this will sell off pretty hard. But this is the market's gonna close here in an hour or two anyway, so it's not gonna matter. I'm not gonna do anything with it. It's a nice thing too. You get the weekends off. So I'll be posting a little bit more on some of these. I'm not gonna track a lot of pairs. I tend to track like maybe 10, New Zealand dollar, euro dollar, pound yen, pound dollar. And so for those that are interested, you'll get more of that. I'll definitely keep it segregated though, because I know not everyone's going to care, and so we'll just try to keep it separate. Okay, let's keep going here on some of these alts. BNB, another one that was potentially rallying here, pulling back. It's kind of a middle zone here, but the big picture, it's still very cautious, right? It's versus Bitcoin. It's vulnerable here. If you see a quick sell-off, that's going to break major support, and then you'll see this thing crack. Let me see here. Decred. Decred's looking pretty good here. It's been on the list for a while. I've been watching this. Looks like it put in a nice little double bottom. Big volume spike a few days back, and it's just been sitting tight. But yeah, it's definitely looking pretty good here. Looking like it wants to take off here. You can see this is a lower volume name, but once these get going, they can move pretty quick there. So that's looking pretty good there. Link has been one of the big winners here, but it's been kind of just really flat, right? For second half of August, it was kind of the early mover, and it's just kind of been sitting around here. Is it going to continue higher? I mean, this could be just another higher low, and you can see another leg higher. Big resistance will be back here, so if you get another move higher, then maybe that's the final target there. Let's see here. So we covered Nano, Neo, Ontology. I was looking at OMG. Just not looking hot. Not yet. QKC was moving earlier in the week. This is a tough one. I was looking at that as a potential top. Didn't turn out to be that, but it is, whoops. But it was close to the top. Let me go back to it, sorry. So it looks like it's just still consolidating here. So I'll clear this guy out, but maybe a little bit of a double top type of action I'm seeing here. Or it could just be a big symmetrical. I mean, this just kind of in the middle. Walton. Man, Walton had that breakout yesterday. Spiked. And look at where it went to, right? It went to the top of this range and then just pulled right back in. So made for a quick trade, but it gave it all up pretty quickly. So if you were on this, I mean, you made it quick 16, 17, maybe 20%, and then just completely retrace the whole thing. So that's why you got to pay attention to these. You know, where's the next kind of target, resistance, support type of thing. And I think that's it. 0x, that's the other one I wanted to see. 0x, still consolidating. Again, another Coinbase name that just really has been sitting tight here for quite some time. So it'll be interesting to see where these play out. Stratus was one I was watching, still consolidating quite a bit down here. Getting very symmetrical here, so definitely want to keep an eye on. If it breaks out here, that'll be positive. So, all right. Anything else, guys? Any other names that you want to see? Anything you're looking at or liking? Bitcoin, I think, is still looking good all around. I'm watching this hourly, so I may jump in here in a little bit. Maybe some of the other alts, but right now, especially because I'm not going to be too close to the screens this weekend, I'll probably choose Bitcoin over some of the alts near term and see how they play out going into the weekend. Okay. Well, I don't see any more comments, any names coming in. Let me go to the Slack real quick, make sure I didn't miss anything here. Oh, Andy was asking about Raven. I missed Raven. That has not been on my radar. Looks like it's had a pretty decent move. Smaller cap name for sure, but I mean, it's already had a 50% move. So yeah, I didn't have that one on my radar. Missed that one, but that one's looking pretty good. Looks like it's finally pulling back a little bit here, but not bad. Let me see here. Okay, so I think I've answered them all. I have a lot of messages from you guys in terms of kind of the renewals and some direct messages. I know some of you guys have asked questions, so I'm going to get back to everybody today. So if I haven't, I apologize, but I'll catch up here a little bit today and get back to those. Can you walk through the Forex platform and the pips and all that when we get into it? Yeah, that's a good idea. What I'll do is I'll do kind of a quick, for those that are new to the Forex, maybe a quick 101 for those that are interested. It's really not that complicated once you get past some of the terminology. And then I'll talk about some of the platforms. And surf's picking up. Man, San Diego sounds really good right about now. It's still pretty warm here in Arizona, but we're getting close. We're turning the corner. Normally, September is my San Diego month. I usually go out there in September, but I don't think I'm going to go this year. I went a couple months ago already. Who says you can't go several times, right? I usually do. So yeah, I'll go through some of those platforms and just some thoughts around if you're interested. The nice thing about Forex is, well, I guess crypto too, right? You don't need a lot to get started, right? Like you can literally start with a couple $100s if you want. Versus like stocks, technically you don't need a lot to get started with stocks, but if you're going to make it worthwhile, you want to have kind of a margin account, and you want to have you want to be able to day trade without hitting some of the pattern rules and stuff like that. And for most people, that may be cost prohibitive, because that means you got to have 25K or more. But if you do, it just makes it nicer, because you can do a lot more things a little bit more freely, which is why I'm not going to do the stocks. I think Forex is going to just be a little bit easier of a transition. There's not as many names to watch either. Cool. All right, I think I covered them all. Hopefully, I don't think I missed any of them, but OST, sorry, I did miss one. Looking at OST here on the, I'm going to zoom out. Man, this got some big wicks here on this daily chart. I mean, obviously, these are lower volume names, so you have to discount that a little bit because of the big wicks, but definitely looks like there's some accumulation happening. It's going to be the next pump coin. All the insiders are loading up before they start tweeting the hell out of it, posting it on the newsletters. OST to the moon. Yeah, it's I mean, it looks like it's trying to get going here. So, but I don't know if this is a double top or if they're already selling out. Oh, Litecoin. We missed Litecoin. How can we forget about poor Litecoin? We do Litecoin BTC here. It's actually been showing some signs of potential bottoming action here, so definitely one to keep an eye on. Versus BTC, you're seeing the RSI kind of trickle higher here as this thing flattens out. So, it hasn't confirmed yet, but the last couple of days have looked pretty decent here, and it's due. I mean, this guy's just been so beaten up here, but we'll see here. I mean, this one's looking good. It's definitely finding some support. So now that it's formed on the Bitcoin side, that's now a very clear must hold, right? If it starts to break below that, you can see this thing crack pretty quickly. So one to keep an eye on. It's looking pretty good, but it's still battling this trend, kind of forming a descending triangle on this 4-hour. But if it starts to roll higher and make higher lows, that's looking pretty good. So maybe you'll get some momentum going there. It'll decide here pretty quickly, it looks like. Litecoin, dollar, I mean, that's going to really just depend on BTC. And it's looking very similar, right? You had the big push higher, the pullback, starting to outperform a little bit right now. So not bad. Maybe I'll go with Litecoin instead of Bitcoin. All right. Okay, guys. Well, I hope you all have a great weekend. Appreciate you guys joining today. We'll go ahead and wrap it up there. And if I missed something, or if you want me to take a look at something, go ahead and post it on the Slack. And I know I've got a lot of questions and stuff to get back to, so I will be playing some catch up here later today as the market starts to slow down a little bit. So, all right, guys. Talk to you next time. Take care.